Good evening, guys. We're live with another episode of the ARCA Racing Podcast. I am your man, Colby Evans, and I am so happy to be back. The 2022 season is here. We had our first race last night, the ARCA E-Series, the new Smyrna 200. Not the biggest show overall, but still, I thought it provided some good on-track action, even though obviously it was only between two cars. So let's get into our small little intro, and then, of course, we'll get on into the race. As of course, follow me on social media at Start and Park Car on Twitter. Subscribe to the channel. Heavily would appreciate it. I uploaded a video a couple of days ago of the specialty racing team. I'd like you guys to go check that out too. It'd be much appreciated. Also, leave a like. It helps the video. It helps you guys. It helps all of us. Follow the main friends of ARCA Racing on Twitter at ARCA_racing. And, of course, the legend himself, Brad Smith. Give him a follow too. Ad driver Brad Smith on Twitter, and let's get right into the show. So we had the ARCA East, New Smyrna. Now, I couldn't really memorize the name. I just kind of called it the New Smyrna 200. It was a little easier. But it was the Race to Stop Suicide 200, and obviously that would be a race I wish we could stop because then it's a very serious issue, and it's a good sponsor for a race because it promotes something that I really hope will happen one day, that we can stop suicide, obviously. So that's a good message, and cool, good sponsor to have for the race. The New Smyrna race we had seen over the past couple of years had been not doing too well in field sizes. 2020, it was before the pandemic, obviously. We had a race before the pandemic, and we had a sizable field. We had well over 20 cars, 22 cars were there. And it was a great race. We had plenty of competitive entries. We had Taylor Gray climb the wall. And we had an exciting finish with Derek Griffith near getting his first win. Come the next year, however, for the 2021 race at New Smyrna, we only had 16 show up. Not the best entry list compared to the previous year. We had one crash out in qualifying, which left us just 15 cars for that race. Come 2022, it looked a little bit brighter. We had 18 cars on the initial entry list. You know, the excitement was there. I was excited. 18 cars on a track like New Smyrna, that's not entirely great, but at the same time, that's a more than capable field size for a track that big. Unfortunately, we came to find out a couple of days before the event that a couple of cars had withdrawn from the event. Our initial entry list, of course, like I just said, had 18 cars. I will read them all off. We had the 0 of Zachary Tinkle, the 0-1 of Stephanie Moyer, the 0-2 of Leland Honeyman, the 10 of Ed Pompa, the 11 of Willie Mullins, the 12 of Tony Cosentino, the 14 of Andrew Tuttle, who was one of the withdrawn entries, Taylor Gray in the 17, Sammy Smith in the 18, Steve Austin in the 22, Max Gutierrez in the 30, Christian Rose in the 42, Mason Diaz in the 44, our man Brad Smith in the 48, Ashton Higgins, the other withdrawn entry, in the 49, Logan Misaraka in the 60, Donald Teague in the 74, and Caleb Costner in the 95. As mentioned, the 14 of Andrew Tuttle and the 49 were our two withdrawn entries. It is not known why that they withdrew from the event. Moff or Sir Welkstein, welcome to the show, guys. Do you guys happen to know any reason why? I asked RJ Stavrik on Twitter, and he didn't know why either, why those cars did not show up, which is a shame because we really could have used, obviously those guys wouldn't have been winning cars, so to say, but they would have been cars that probably could have run maybe about 6th to 10th. And in that range, we obviously needed more entries there, but that kind of hindered things, left us down with just 16. Still one more car than last year, but then we had even more issues. As you guys know, the famous Ford that Peterson Racing has, which is now white this year, in case you guys are wondering, the black Ford that Wayne Peterson Racing ran last year got a little scuffed up at Kansas. So I don't know if that's why they painted it white, but the black Ford from Peterson Motorsports last year is now a white Ford, and it is still chassis BDR 65 from 2003. They unfortunately, I believe, lost a transmission when they went up for their practice qualifying session, and they didn't have a backup transmission. I believe they did get help from Brad Smith. Zachary Tinkle posted that they did get help from Andy Hillenberg and Brad Smith, but unfortunately the transmission would not be ready for a couple of days. Or maybe the next day. Either way, they were not going to be able to race that night, which once again, for the second year in a row, left us with just 15 cars, despite having a promising 18 possibly show up for the race. And I was already a little concerned about it going into it because I knew Brad was not running the full race. I already knew that. I knew more than likely that this race was just to get another car in the East Field, Brad to get some extra money, and a kind of a shakedown start and park with Brad's newer motor in the Chevrolet. It is not the same motor from last season, if anyone is wondering. It's not an Ilmore either, sadly, but it is not the same truck motor. Yes, that was a truck it was a former Truck Series motor in Brad's 48 car. So in case you guys were wondering, it's actually a former truck motor, but they said that this new motor that is in the 48 Chevrolet comes from Kenny Schrader's team. So shout out to Kenny Schrader for helping out Brad and keeping him going. But I knew this was pretty much a shakedown start and park, just to make sure all the kinks were right. That's what I have to believe it was. And it did the job. They did their job. Brad ran his laps and then pulled in. Still got the payout obviously ain't the best. $1,175 is, I believe, what Brad got, which, ain't exactly perfect. Ain't exactly perfect by any means, but hey, it's better than nothing. Better than nothing, that's for sure. In case you guys are wondering, also updates on the Ford. My good friend Jay Reynolds and the guys, they're getting closer, done with it. Do expect that Ford to run this season. Obviously, I thought they were going to run it at the Daytona testing. That was the plan that Brad told me back in July of last year. Unfortunately, it's just, you say that to me back in July, only time can tell, sadly, and they just couldn't put it together. The time was not on their hands, sadly, but they're getting it together now. It's just going to be maybe a couple of months behind of when they actually wanted to debut the Ford. But luckily, the Chevrolet is ready to go, and that car will be used for the time being until they bring out the Ford. And I kind of would expect the Ford to primarily run the bigger tracks and then maybe the smaller tracks. The Chevrolet would probably run the smaller tracks, and the Ford would run the bigger tracks. That's kind of how I see it. They would probably do it, but I'm not sure exactly how that would play out. But going back to the field, we only had 15 that would start the race then. But if you guys did watch the Flow Racing broadcast, you guys can actually see the tow truck pushing the zero around the track. Now, this car was not going to fire up at all. And they basically, the theory that I had was that they were pushing the zero around on the pace laps so that in some way, shape, or form, they had planned to start the race. I've seen this done before in the ARCA series with teams who don't have a car that can clearly start the race. We've seen this in the truck. I saw this in the truck series one time with Josh Rayom and Joey Gase driving for Jennifer Jo Cobb. I saw that two other times, actually. And then I think we also, Brockbeard, my good friend Brockbeard, also said something about that in a cup race many, many, many years ago, where a team rode around on the pace laps, the car not even be able to run, but they still kind of technically got credit for starting the race. I hope that's what they got, because for all the effort that Wayne Peterson went through and that team did for that weekend, not even to run a legit lap on track, I hope they still got the $1,150 for 15th, technically, because for 16th, I mean, because that team deserves that money. They need that money to go into Daytona, and it would be really cool if ARCA actually still gave them that money. I'm not sure if they'll get the owner points for starting the race. I do believe the little number you can get is 3. So they might just start Wayne at 3, or they might give him the bottom number at 16. I'm not sure. We'll look at the owner points a little later in the show. So like I said, we had that. So that left us with just 15 cars. Practice results, aka qualifying. I like how they do it. You have the time to practice your car, but you also got to lay down that flyer lap. And without a shadow of a doubt, looking at practice and qualifying times, it was very clear that Sammy Smith and Taylor Gray would be the cars to beat, as they beat third place Donald Teague by nearly half a second. Now, of course, we all kind of predicted at the beginning of the year, Moff, Ralkstein, and I kind of all predicted that the championship was more than likely going to come down to these two guys, for the East side at least. With maybe the third place guy more than likely being the Leland Honeyman kid. He actually would end up fourth. Mason Diaz, in a last-minute effort for Farrier McClure Racing, ran fifth. Logan Misaraka ran an impressive sixth, I will say. Max Gutierrez seventh. Big Willie Mullins eighth. Christian Rose was ninth. And our girl Stephanie was 10th. So this is obviously where they started. We had the other starting park in the field was the 12 of Tony Cosentino. I pretty much knew that he was going to be a starting park, because even when I interviewed Tony a couple of months ago, by the way, go check out that video. He did say he wanted to run a lot more races this season with Andy, even if a lot of them would have been starting parks. I mean, either way, time behind the wheel is time behind the wheel. I think we can all agree. If I or you guys had the opportunity to be a race car driver, would doing a start and park suck? Yes. Yes, it would. But at the end of the day, would you still do it if it meant getting behind the wheel of a race car and competing in a sanctioned event? You guys might say no, but I know in your hearts you guys would do it. So would I. So no matter for Tony Cosentino, he still had some fun out there. Brad would run 8 laps before pulling off, and then he would run 21 laps. We did have an early spin in the race. Gutierrez really almost killed his entire race on the first lap. Was spinning in 1 and 2, going a couple laps. He didn't go a lap down, but what happened was that obviously on a short track, older surface such as New Smyrna Speedway, when you hurt your tires, you're done. It's that track where if you kill your tires too fast, you're going to be crap at the end of a run. And that's kind of what happened to the 30 after that. And I kind of predicted that was going to happen, that he had shot his tires. And sure enough, the 18 of Sammy Smith caught up to him fairly quickly and put him, I think, 2 laps down before the next caution had come out. So they started the race. The main battle was kind of for third. Sammy had pulled out to a big lead. Taylor Gray was just following about a half a second behind. But then a couple of seconds behind them, it was basically between Donald Teague, Honeyman, and Diaz. That was kind of the best battle, in my opinion, of the whole race. Those three were very evenly matched. And I'll admit, Donald Teague really impressed me. Now, for the people who have not watched the Pinty series, I would. It's a very entertaining series. The NASCAR Canadian Pinty series really deserves a lot more attention than it does. It really does. If you guys are Dodge fans of NASCAR, go watch the series. Dodge is one of the premier manufacturers, and they win quite a bit. But Donald really impressed me. Now, we know the Visconti Motorsports team in general is a good team. They are. They're a very successful and good team. But still, having a driver like Donald, you wouldn't have expected him to run so competitive. So it was really good to see him actually be really competitive. I did expect the 0-2 to be competitive as well. Judging by the driver they have, Leland Honeyman's a good short track racer. He's just not really well known to main series ARCA fans. I do think the real test for Leland will be Iowa, because if I'm correct, that is the biggest track that the East Series will go to this season. And that really puts the test on all of the East Series teams. Going to a track like Iowa, even though it's only, 7/8 mile for a guy like Leland, it might be one of the biggest tracks he's run on in his career, or maybe only a couple of times in his career. That will be the true test for him. But he ran a very good race, pretty much ran third the entire night until the 30 somehow made up his time and got back past him with just a couple laps to go. We'll get to that a little later on. So as we said, by lap 20, the 22 of Steve Austin, poor Steve Austin, rookie, being a rookie at his age, mixed in with the car just not really being up to par with speed, not having the best brakes, not having radio communication. The 22 and the Caudell Racing team had a rough race. If you guys had tracked the CCM Racing page on Twitter, they had a rough race. Steve Austin and those guys had a rough race. Steve was getting lapped quite a bit. I just think as he was trying to stay out of the way, and when you're trying to stay out of the way, you just go slower and slower and slower, especially when the 18 is just laying down flyer after flyer after flyer of laps. I think by lap 40, Steve was already 3 or 4 laps down, and I appoint that to him just being a rookie, and the overall car speed itself not being where it needs to be, and the car itself overheating. Despite they say there wasn't engine issues with the car was clearly overheating a lot during the race. So we had 2 weather delays, which delayed the race, unfortunately, for about, say, in total, a good 30 minutes. I mean, it delayed the race quite a bit. Same last year, too, you know. But, hey, rain in Florida, shocking, isn't it? I mean, rain in Florida, that never happens. Yeah, who would have predicted rain in Florida? So we got after that. Then we had a spin by one of Andy's entries, Big Willie Mullins. I think one of my guys said that this was a Willie Mullins car with Andy's support, but I don't think Willie runs Toyotas. So I think this was actually an Andy Hillenberg car. I don't know. I'm just confused on that. They said that it might have been Willie's car, but at the same time, I know Willie doesn't run Toyotas. Andy does. So I think this was actually an Andy Hillenberg entry. And in case you guys were also following, our man Brad Perez was actually helping out the team. So that was pretty cool too, seeing Brad Perez help out the Andy Hillenberg team. So we had by lap that it took place on lap 86. By the time we went to green back on lap 87, I think we only had about 7 cars left on the lead lap. And this is where it really kind of started to get – I started seeing a lot of tweets kind of bashing the race, saying, oh, only 2 cars. You know, everyone else is not even close. And look, you know what? At the end of the day, I got to say is I get it, all right? It's obvious. But why don't you guys just sit back and enjoy the race? Because, yes, there was only a battle between 2 cars. It was obvious, the 17 and the 18. But, man, were they putting on a good show. They were. You cannot tell me that the battle between the 17 and the 18 was putting on a good show. So you can't tell me that they weren't, because they were. It would have been nice though if we could have seen a Diaz, a Teej, and a Honeyman getting up there and mixing it in with them. They just don't have the equipment that those guys do, sadly. We had a couple more fallouts. Caleb Costner fell out at the first weather caution with overheating issues after 47 laps. That was not a start in park. The car had simply struggled with overheating issues and had slowed down. By the time the 22 had spun after our halfway break on lap 104, the lead had only traded hands a couple of times. Taylor Gray had gotten the lead just before the halfway break, and then with 6 laps to go, Sammy Smith had retaken the lead. Just after the halfway break, the 22 had spun on track, and apparently after that, I think we overheard the Flow Racing people saying that the 22 had pretty much called it a night after that, which I don't blame them. It was a pretty rough night for them. And Steve Austin would officially pull off finishing 12th after completing 122 laps. And that left us with just 11 cars left on the track. And, man, I was still entertained by the top two, but, man, it was really noticeable when there's not a lot of cars on track, even at a small track like New Smyrna. You really notice that the cars, you had the top two cars, and then you had 3rd through 7th together, and then you had 8th through 11th running together. It was like pack racing, but at a half mile. They were in 3 different packs racing each other, but the top 2 fast cars would just lap everyone. I actually thought if the race had gone green to the finish, that they might have been the only 2 on the lead lap. They were going that fast. They were putting on that kind of a pace that they were consistently a half a second to a second faster a lap than the 3rd place car, even though he was giving it all he got. So just tells you how much money the DGR team and the now Kyle Busch team have in the series, more than, of course, the Young's Motorsports team, which, again, I still would say don't write them off yet. I still think Leland could pull off a miracle this year, and I hope he does. We actually ended up having our first crash. Now, although the battle for lead wasn't, all that interesting most of the race, with just a couple of bright spots, the 30 and the 42 were just beating the living crap out of each other. Christian Rose and Max Gutierrez, they were beating the crap out of each other, I would say, for a good 30 or 40 laps, with the 42 full sending it into 3 to get past him, and then the 30 doing the crossover. Now, looking at the replay, did he full-on dump him? It's debatable. It also looks like he didn't even hit him. But on lap 145 actually, the 42 would go head-on into the wall. It didn't kill the car, I would say, but there was enough damage to the point where it was basically enough damage to where, why keep running? Like at that point, Christian was, I believe he was in 6th or 7th place. He only fell to 11th. I think it was the kind of damage, and honestly, in my opinion, that would be like, why keep running? We're going to be so slow. The lap cars might even catch us because we're going so slow. It also could have knocked a hole in the radiator. Again, I don't know for sure. But either way, it was not a good deal for the 42 team. 2 years in a row, the Bruce Cook team has had a really rough go at New Smyrna. And it's a shame to see. They appear to be going full-time this year in the East Division with drivers Christian Rose, Amber Slagle, and Landon Lewis. I'm not sure where Amber and Landon will drive, but it does appear that the 42 is going full-time in the series. So that left us with just 10 cars left, with just 50 laps to go. And the race, and I kind of know at this point that the likelihood of a caution was really rare. With just 10 cars, even on a half-mile track, or a little bit smaller than a half-mile track that is New Smyrna, that's just too spaced out. You had your 2 front-running cars. And then you had 3rd through 7th, and then you had your 3 stragglers, who, were still running their own race because they were very close to each other on laps. And the race, like I said, the race for 3rd through 7th was very entertaining. Like, those guys had all evenly matched cars. And I'll even say Logan Misiraka. She got so many lucky dogs. She was right up there with them. I'll give her a lot of credit. I think this was her debut. Very good effort by her. And I hope Josh Williams and them can find the sponsorship to bring her back. Also, what was pretty cool is Josh Williams was there. He was changing tires. He was the best. So, for any Josh Williams fans, he really does it all. And that's why I think he deserves way more respect than people give him. And yes, he still had his awesome mullet. No, but I kind of knew that they were going to get spread out. By this point, Taylor Gray had still had the lead coming off the restart on lap 153. But unshockingly, Sammy Smith was able to get a huge launch coming off a corner, cleared Taylor, and by that point, I kind of knew it was over. Taylor, the only hope was if Sammy did get held up by lap cars, which he did at some point late in the race. Two of the Hillenberg entries were battling each other, and the 18 had nowhere to go. And the 18 had to slow down, and the 17 got pretty much within about a half a second. But then when they finally got past, it kind of spread back out a little bit. And I thought the race was honestly over until the 44 of Mason Diaz spun going into turn 1. And he had actually been smoking pretty much the entire race. But the smoke had really gotten worse by the end of the race. And I think he started to spin in his own oil. Either that or he lost the brakes completely because somehow he didn't hit the wall. But he just went into turn 1 and just flat out lost it. I had to think it was probably oil on the tires, or he just got really, really loose. Now, I did note last night that this deal with Mason Diaz is not for the full East season, just for last night at New Smyrna and, this Saturday at Daytona is what this deal is for. So, sadly, Mason Diaz will not get the chance to go full-time again in the East Circuit like he has done the last couple of seasons. So this left us with just a 7-lap shootout with, ironically enough, Sammy Smith, Tyler Gray, and Max Gutierrez starting back up there. By this point, Gutierrez had gotten himself back on the lead lap. Would we see the famous finish from last year? Unfortunately, we didn't. Gray did not get going on the restart. Sammy Smith pulled out to a huge lead and cruised to an easy victory with Taylor Gray coming in second. Gutierrez getting past Leland Honeyman for third. A great recovery for him. Leland Honeyman coming in fourth. Donald Teague, a video actually, in a random video uploaded to Twitter, saw that the 74 had actually, looks like maybe lost a cylinder. Ooh, sorry there, guys. Had actually lost a cylinder towards the end of the race and was just putting around, just trying to finish the race. But luckily, still got a top 5 finish out of it in 5th for Donald Teague. Mason Diaz was credited in 6th. Logan Misiraka in 7th. Big Willie in 8th. Stephanie in 9th. And Ed Pompa finishing in 10th. So we only had 10 cars finish the race. Saw a lot of backlash on the race on social media. Former truck driver Landon Huffman gave a really good optimistic review of the race, expecting more cars to show up. And a lot of other NASCAR-related crew members giving their insight on it too, which said that the series was likely to be either canceled or merged into the main series for this year. But they wanted to give it one more year post-COVID to see how the car counts would do. And obviously, it didn't work. So that does beg into question. Is this the last year of the E-Series? It might be. Now, my input, and I've told this to you guys multiple times, my input of what we would do with the E-Series, I would merge it with the Sioux Chiefs Showdown. That way, it would give the E-Series guys 10 races with the big league drivers and teams, but they're still running for their own championship. And it would really test the East teams on dirt tracks, short tracks, short tracks, and about medium-sized short tracks. I don't know how you prefer your short tracks. But it'll be interesting to see what they do with the East Series. The West Series we've seen has done very okay with their car counts. And even the main series, I believe, will do fairly good with their car counts too this year. But definitely this car count for this race was not a good omen for what the future holds for the East Series, of course, as this year goes on. So as we look at the race results, like I said, we only had 2 leaders. Sammy Smith led 167. Taylor Gray led the other 33. Sammy Smith already pulling away to a 6-point lead in the point standings. Your point standings are pretty much the same as race results, considering that this is race 1 of 2022. Just to give you a rundown, though, of how far behind they are in points. Taylor Gray is -6. Gutierrez is -8. Honeyman is -9. And Donald Teague is -10. Now, note from Charles Crawl, who was on commentary, that the 74 team does intend to go full-time racing in the E-Series in 2022, but they only have the first 2 races sold from Visconti with Donald Teague. The other 5 have yet to be sold. Now, who will drive the car? I don't know. For everyone watching, who do you guys think will drive the 74 car the rest of the season? Could we see Brandon McReynolds come back? Unlikely, but who knows? Who do you guys think could drive it? Because obviously this team wants to go for the Owners' Championship, which, is the championship that actually pays when it comes to ARCA. And in case you guys are wondering, Peterson Motorsports did get credit for starting the race. Their points championship in the owner's side is actually here. I'll pull up the owner's championship right here. Bear with me for 1 second. The owner's championship is the same. They did get credited with 16th place, and they did get the 28 points. So again, I did predict that the 43 of Daniel Dye would run the East Circuit. That was not true, unfortunately. So I think it's safe to say that your champion this year will probably either be Taylor Gray or Sammy Smith. I like Leland. I like his chances at some of these other races, but the speed, as we saw tonight, it just won't be there at any of these tracks. It's a shame because I like this team. I like the combination. I like the sponsorship. It's just, when it comes to the budget of Young's Motorsports versus KBM and JGR and then DGR, it's not even close, the budget gap. It's so far apart. So you can't really help it. But I saw a lot of people trashing the race. I don't like to see that. From my perspective, the race was not perfect, obviously, but still, no matter what, I thought it definitely put on a good show between 2 cars, at least. But I think it is safe to say that the E-Series may not be around after this year. I think it'd be best to merge it with the main circuit. But hey, that's just my personal opinion. Some people agree, some people don't. But after last night's race, I think that's a telltale sign that something needs to be done, or we're just going to see lower and lower car counts for the rest of the year. But anyway, that was the review for New Smyrna. I thought it was okay personally. Some people trashed it. Some people didn't like it. But you know what? That's why everyone's intended to their own opinion. Everyone is intended to their own opinion. But obviously, with that out of the way, we'll add the halfway portion of the show, and then we'll get back to our Daytona preview this Saturday. So, as I said at the beginning of the video, we got 3 people watching right now. I wish we had a little bit more. Kind of surprised, in the past we've had a couple more, but I still thank the 3 of you guys who are watching live with me. It's always appreciated. We only got 2 likes, though, so for that 3rd person watching, if you could hit the like button, be much appreciated. As of course, check out my other videos. ARCA Racing, NASCAR Backmarker News, your official news outlet for news of the backmarker teams of NASCAR, who may not get the shout outs that they deserve. And of course, all ARCA Racing News. I'm your guy. Like and subscribe. We have a couple of content videos coming out soon. I'm quickly learning that these content videos are not as easy to make as I thought they were. So, trying to get those out for you guys. But anyway, check out my most recent one, Specialty Racing, the 61 team of the late 2000s Xfinity Series. I think you guys would like it, so go check it out. Be much appreciated. Give that a like, too. But anyway, after one more water, we'll get into the Daytona portion. So the Lucas Oil 200, entering its who knows how many years now, 2022, hard to believe. The entry list came out And boy, I tell you, it made me almost cry. It was so happy to see 37 cars in this day and age, post-COVID. I mean, an amazing field. You know, a lot of good cars, not a bunch of stragglers. Yeah, we'll have our stragglers, yes. But we have at least, I would say, a good 20 to 25 cars who legitimately have a chance of winning this race. I honestly believe that. It's just all about track position. But I do believe we have a good 20 to 25 cars that could be competitive, and I would say at least 10 who could win. Now, looking at our entry list notables, we have the quarterman, Dale Quarterly, is back with Bobby Gerhart Racing, which I think is one of the best stories of the year. We had, in my opinion, the sentimental story of this race, and that is Brian Caltrider. Now, if many of you guys know, I put out a tweet today. This man lost everything from his race shop, at least. Not his actual home, but his race shop burnt to the ground, completely killed all of his racing equipment, including 2 or 3 race cars. And to see him come back 4 years later is really heartwarming. And I know I cheer on Brad Smith. I know I cheer on Wayne Peterson. And I know I cheer on Tim Richmond. But there's another special underdog that I want you guys to cheer for in this race on Saturday, and that's Brian Caltrider. He deserves it. He's a nice guy. He just loves to race. He's one of those older guys. He doesn't have a lot of money. He just comes to the track. I think that's one thing that people just forget. You know, these older guys who come to the track with a car that they know won't win, they don't care about winning. They just do it because they love it. And I feel like that's one of the things that's really forgotten about this sport when it comes to the younger fans. For the people who, at the back of the pack, the older guys, who have been doing this for a long time, showing up, knowing they don't have a chance to win, they just show up and race because they love it. They know they won't win. They just want to do it because they love it. And I wish more fans today had that kind of respect in them. But all they want to call them is just guys who are in the way and shouldn't be on the track. And to me, that's just disrespectful. Anyway, some other notables. We also have 79-year-old Benny Chastain. 79 years old. Benny Chastain will be driving for Andy Hillenberg. Of course, we got Brad Smith running there. We got Sean Corr and the very special Bob Keselowski tribute car, the number 29. If you guys want a competitive underdog to cheer for this race, cheer on that 29 car. In my opinion, that is the underdog of the race, and I pray that car can win the race. You guys will see a grown man cry on YouTube if that 29 wins the race. I will legitimately cry because the Keselowskis are my favorite racing family. Brad is my favorite driver, and I've met Brian so many times. A great family, and I miss Bob. So you guys will see me cry if that 29 wins. Some other fun stories in the field. In case you guys are wondering, we did get confirmation that Amber Balcan's number 30 Ford will be entering its 21st year of service. CGR, Chip Ganassi Racing -005. I think what they said, Brock Beard said it was built in 1999, 2000? This car was involved in the fatal crash that took Dale Earnhardt from us. Now, was it Sterling's fault? No. It was just a freak accident. You know, everyone who always blames Sterling for that, it was a freak accident. We all know it was. Accidents happen in racing, and, you know, accidents just, like I said, accidents happen. I don't know how else to explain it. Either way, that's an infamous car. It really is. You know, people think that car got crushed or destroyed. It continued to run for many years with the Silver Bullet team. It was then sold to a couple of different ARCA teams here and there. And wouldn't you know it, it ended up with the Ready Motorsports team. And so how about that, folks? If you guys want a really cool story Cheer on Amber Balkan. She's racing a 21-year-old race car. It's almost as old as her. Is it as old as Amber? How old is Amber? Does anyone know in the chat? How old is Amber Balkan? Because is that car as old as her? And the one thing I want to know, does she even know that? Amber, if you're watching, do you know your car is 22 years old? Your car is old, and it's still going. So I think that's just such a cool story. And I really hope that, Jamie Little or Phil Parsons, I hope they bring that up. It's stories like that I want reported. It's stories like that I want out there so the fans can be like, whoa, look at that. 22-year-old race car. And its 21st year of service. Still going strong. I mean, this is basically just like the Freak truck. Anyone remember Freak? The legendary super speedway truck that wouldn't die? By the way, check out NASCAR Man's video on that. I mean, it's just like the chassis stories are so cool. And I'm happy to be doing the Chassis Story Time series on my channel. Yes, I know it's a little plug, but here and there. It's those stories I wish that could be told. Like, for instance, I already mentioned it before. The car that Con Nicolopoulos for Peterson Motorsports, the 06 Ford, or I think the 0 Ford actually, is Bill Davis Racing -65. That car was built in 2002 and started racing in 2003. It's entering its 19th year of service. It's those types of stories that make ARCA so cool. And it's why I wish more people would care about ARCA, because those kinds of stories could really attract a younger fan base. Like, how cool imagine like a 10-year-old kid going to an ARCA race at Daytona on Saturday and his dad telling him, hey, son, there's a 21-year-old race car out there. I mean, you can't tell me that as a young fan, that'd be inspiring. That'd be cool. That'd get you invested in the series. And it's just, I know I'm ranting on it, but man, it's one of the frustrating parts that to me gets overlooked so much. The history behind these race cars is so cool. And it's really shows the real backbone of the ARCA series and why I still love the series to this day. So keep that in mind. The 30 and the 0 entries combined are 40 years old. That, my friends, is cool, whether you like it or not. We got 37 cars. We got 5 Venerini cars. Actually, I think 4. Yeah, 4. Dang, I got my words mixed up. 4 Venerini cars. Will Venerini win again? We got 37 cars in the race. You guys tell me. Will Venerini win the race? I don't know. I know they got 4 entries. They got 4 bullets out there. They got 4 good drivers. But I'm telling you, man, those guys are going to be hard to beat. But we got a lot of other good entries in the field. Andy Hillenberg brings good cars to Daytona. He brings what cars he can. They are good entries. Willie Mullins. We know Willie Mullins is a great plate racer too. We know both of the Rev Racing cars will be very fast now that they have Chevrolet support. We know Drew Dollar is also going to be very fast in the 18. We know, like I said, the 29 of Sean Court, he'll be very fast. Greg Van Alst, he'll be very fast. Will Kimmel. Yes, did you guys know Will Kimmel's racing? How about that? The 68 car for Kimmel Racing is back. After what, 3 or 4 years? The 68 machine for Kimmel Racing is back, and it warms my heart to see a working man, a real working race car driver, and Will Kimmel getting a shot again. If you guys have not met Will Kimmel, one of the nicest, genuine human beings I have met in the garage. I cannot say enough nice things about the Kimmel family. And anyone who has anything bad to say about the Kimmel family, I'd like to hear your reasoning why. Because this family has been nothing but nice to me in the garage. Bill is always a good person to talk to if I need help, especially Will too. So good to see Will back, and obviously Scott Melton will be in their primary 69 entry as well. Pizza Man, Andy Jankowiak, you know he'll be competitive too. I'm not saying that Andy can't win the race, but my only concern for Andy is, yes, that car is capable of leading, but is Andy experienced enough to hold off the pack? I don't know if he's that experienced yet. I'm afraid that if he tries to defend the pack or defend himself from the pack, he might get himself crashed. That's my biggest fear. So I think Andy can easily run top 5, but I don't think he can hold off second place if they tried to make a move. That's what I'm saying. Other notable entries, like I said, we got Mason Diaz again. We got Daniel Dye again for the GMS team. Max Gutierrez actually is running in this race in the 32 entry in a second car for the Rep Motorsports team. Other notable entries, we got old man Dave Mader, who I said before he was I said he was my underdog pick. Sean Corr, I've changed it to Sean Corr, but man, think about that. If nearly 70-year-old Dave Mader wins, again, another reason just to love ARCA. But look out for Dave Mader. The Jeff Spraker Racing team always brings a good car to this race. Like I said, guys, so many good cars in this lineup. Not a lot of stragglers. The only stragglers, and what I call stragglers, are cars that probably can't keep up in the draft. And those guys being really Tinkle, Nicolopoulos, Smith, and I'll even throw in Chastain, Benny Chastain, because I don't think he's going to want to get in the action at his age. Or maybe he will. I'm not really sure. Now, I'm not saying that based off of those drivers' ability. It's because they don't have Ilmor motors. They have legacy motors. And those motors, well, they're just not like the Ilmor motors. I mean, they might try to hang in the draft, but unless they have somebody behind them, they might not be able to keep up. Now, I do think Tinkle is going to try his hardest to stay in the draft. But guys like Khan and Brad, they might just draft around with each other rather than just try to mix it up in the pack, because we know with the rookies of today, they're not exactly safe. And a big one could happen at any moment. You guys in the chat, I'm not sure who you guys are picking. I really have no idea who it could be, in all honesty. Really have no idea. It's an open forum to who could win this race. But I'm very excited. I'm very excited. I know a lot of people are just going to be like, oh, it's the ARCA race. It doesn't really matter. I'm telling you, after what we saw at the Talladega race last year, I think ARCA has finally figured out this drafting package, and I think we're going to see one heck of a show. Will we see a 20-car pileup? Probably. We got a lot of rookies, a lot of young guys, and a couple of women in this field. It might be a bloodbath out there. But I don't know. I couldn't tell you guys who's going to win this race. All I can say is watch the race, enjoy it. ARCA's back for 2022, and I think that this is going to be one of the best Daytona races, Daytona ARCA races in quite a long time. So that's all I can say. If I have to give off my pick for the win, man, I'd have to go with what Moff said in the chat, Corey Heim. If you guys want me to pick an easy pick to win the race, it's Corey Heim, mainly because he won last year. I think Venturini is just going to be too hard to beat. Underdog pick 29 of Sean Corr. That's my underdog pick. Now, overall championship picks for the main ARCA series. My pick originally was actually going to be Daniel Dye as the main winner of ARCA in 2022. But I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case. Now, for full-time ARCA, we don't have many full-time drivers, yes. And Daniel Dye was originally my pick. But my new pick kind of for the championship, I would say I would really not put out Nick Sanchez. I'm not kidding, man. I really do think Sanchez could lock up this championship. Because they didn't have Chevrolet support last year. Now they do. I really do think Sanchez surprises everyone and wins the championship with Dye in second and then Raja in third. I don't pick Daniel Dye for the championship now. I'm picking Sanchez. I really think Rev Racing wins the championship this year. Now, obviously, who are you guys picking? Oh, I see a lot of Daniel Dyes in the chats. Now, obviously, it will not be Sammy Smith, sadly. Can only run 16 races. We already know that. But they are going after the Owners' Championship. The Kyle Busch ARCA team, though, is my pick for the Owners' Championship. I feel like that team's just going to be too hard to beat. So, Drivers' Champion picks so far for this season is Nick Sanchez, but my Owners' Championship predictions is actually the 18 of Kyle Busch Motorsports. Those are all my predictions for 2022. You guys can comment down below what you guys think they might be, and we'll just have to see if our predictions are true come the end of the season, because it's going to be a long road ahead of us. But anyway, we're now at 51 minutes, 6 people watching. I can't thank you guys enough for joining me tonight for the new Smyrna review, the Daytona preview. We got the ARCA race this Saturday, 1 p.m. I'll be doing live tweeting with you guys. Follow me on Start and Park Car for all that information. I love you guys. Again, like, subscribe to the video. Go check out my other videos. Do all that other fun crap you guys do. And we have 7 minutes until Daytona 500 qualifying. So I'll see you guys later. You guys have a good rest of your night. And remember, ARCA this Saturday. Love you guys. So long.